We rewatched all of season 1 of The Rings of Power so that you didn't have to. Now, this was hard enough the first time for me, but how was it the second time around for you?
The show is so slow.
I feel really bad for the people who imagine waiting a week for that.
This show makes House of the Dragon feel action-packed, which is kind of crazy.
And people started hating that.
People got very angry at House of the Dragon.
Disclaimer.
We like the Lord of the Rings movies a lot, but we are not big into the lore. And to be honest, the lore scares me and is very confusing.
Correct. Mention a Silmarillion in my presence and my hoo-ha dries up.
All I know about this show is it's kind of cobbled together a bunch of different bits of the lore because they didn't have the rights to all the bits.
Yes.
So they've kind of just like done what they can, which seems an insane thing to do for a show. Like they've decided that they want to make a Lord of the Rings show and then they've kind of just bought whatever they could.
I feel like I'm not going to talk about it much as being like, this is a lore accurate. Like, that's someone else's job to do.
Yeah. We're just going to talk about, is it a good show?
Yes.
And the answer in short is no.
Correct.
But let's make that long. So the story basically follows 4 main storylines. You've got your main girl Galadriel. You've got the hobbits or the Harfoots. You've got Elrond Hubbard. No, you've got Elrond who's doing some dwarf stuff. And then you've got Arondir, who is the short hair elf that's doing his own thing.
They end his story very quickly. You get to like episode 5 and you never see him again.
Yeah, he's in 6, but Galadriel rocks up by then.
Let's start with Galadriel because she's the main gal.
She's the main Galadriel.
My go Galadriel. Play the clip.
My go Galadriel. Yeah, I love Galadriel.
Her whole thing is that she has no emotions and she's hunting down Sauron, who she believes is still alive.
And she only speaks in poems.
Everyone in the show does.
But she does it the worst.
I mean, the elves in general, I think, do it the worst because they're meant to be thousands of years old and they're just very boring.
That's the thing. It's like, I think they're trying to show this like higher caste of being where it's like, we've lived for thousands of years, we've experienced it all, and we know we have all this beautiful like art and this way of life that's like way better than everyone, and we have this heaven that we can go to whenever we want, kind of, if you're worthy.
Which is weird.
So it's like they have to speak in this nimbly fimbly kind of way. But then when you watch like Lord of the Rings, like the OGs, Elrond wasn't talking like this in the future.
Galadriel in the movies talks quite flowery, but she's not the main character, so you only hear her talk for a little bit.
Yeah.
Whereas most of the time it's people talking normally. So it's kind of strange that there's so much of it and everyone talks in like simile rhyme poetry.
It just sounds like bad poetry.
Like it's like 8th grade poetry. It's very grating on your ears. And half the time it barely makes sense. Like the worst one is in Galadriel's first scene when she's a child, which is where we meet her. And her brother says, "Why does the stone sink, but the ship sail?" The stone sinks because it looks down, whereas the ship looks up. And it's like, what? And then she's like, "But the sun reflects in the water, so the sun is the same in the water, so you don't know which way up is." And it's like,
disgusting.
That's not... What?
Disgusting.
The show makes me feel dumb because I feel like I don't understand what anyone is even doing in the show because they're not making their motives clear, and Halbrand is the worst of it.
Well, it's like their way of communicating their emotions isn't good.
Well, that's because Galadriel's face can't change.
I must have had earphones in the whole time because I feel like the music never gave me an emotion like Lord of the Rings did, like Lord of the Rings, like it gives you emotion through that music. Ba, 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 ba. You're like, whoa, it feels so good. And like this one, I didn't feel a connection to any of the music at all.
Yeah, it's there, but I just don't care about it most of the time.
Yes, Galadriel's quest. So Galadriel quested for 1,000 years to try and find a trace of Sauron.
Which is already a boring place to start because she's been looking for this for 1,000 years. She hasn't found anything. It seems like we only meet her when she finds something 1,000 years in, but the whole time she's been like steadfast in believing that Sauron is still alive. She doesn't really have a reason to, apart from there is a tempest in her.
There is a tempest in me.
Yes.
And she feels it in her waters.
I think she needs to. She needs revenge or she needs closure for her brother's death.
But she has nowhere to put that anger, which is interesting from like a character point of view of like, oh, she can never satisfy her grudge against Sauron because she'll never meet him. But then us watching that is her just being an angry, petulant child. And she's like 3,000 years old.
And taking it out on everybody who puts their faith in her. Like all her men mutiny against her because the king hates her.
But she's also perfect the whole time. Like she dispatches a snow troll in the first 5 minutes of the show with zero effort, no sweat broken. Everyone else in her party can't do it. and she does it herself. So she's perfect in every way, and she's always correct. Like, Sauron is still real. We find out in the finale that Sauron is still around, and it kind of kills the mystery of when she meets Halbrand, which she does so in the second episode after all the men say, hey, Sauron's dead. You can go to heaven now. And she's like, okay, I'll go to heaven now. Gets to heaven and decides not to go to heaven. Lord of the Rings lore is so confusing. Every time I like touch it, I'm like, what the fuck is happening? Like, you can go to heaven whenever you want, but not everyone wants to go to heaven.
It's the Undying Lands, man.
I don't know if that's in the books or that's a show thing that they can just go to heaven.
You can only go there if the elves say you can.
Why are they not in heaven
But they all can't
all the
just
time?
go. Yeah, I don't know why they came back to
Like, the
Middle
main
Earth.
overarching plot for the elves is the fact that their tree is dying, so they're probably going to die, apparently, even though we never see them die.
Hey, just leave. Go back to Valinor.
Go to heaven. That sounds great. That sounds, as far as I can tell, that's where they were born.
Don't yell at us.
Please feel free to correct us in the comments.
But also, the show doesn't explain it to you.
Yes. Well, the show doesn't explain itself, but it tries to. Because the Lord of the Rings movies seem to do it very interestingly, where they barely touch the lore, but you just kind of understand what you need to for the story. Whereas this show will randomly just, like, the dwarves are talking to each other, and he's like, yeah, but 3,000 years ago, the gods made the dwarves, and ever since then, this has happened, and we're doing this. And then the elves are like, oh yeah, we didn't have a sun, but then we had trees.
You know, us
But then
dwarves have a second name that only some dwarves know to us.
Yeah, just in the middle of conversation.
I
they
see you know
just
stone tongue.
they just lore dump on you, but without explaining the lore.
But not in an interesting way as well.
And
It's like,
yeah, it doesn't make sense in the context.
my favorite shipping of Elrond and Durin, that could have been so good. The whole, like, this is my second name, we only tell important people, but it's like brushed over so quickly because Elrond's like a man on a mission.
Yeah. When Durin decides that to tell him the big lore dump, how he's like, oh, I have a second name, and we find out that his second name is just subscribe. That's not emotional. That's below. This show does the same thing that House of the Dragon does, where it jumps around every few minutes. So you get a few minutes with one of your characters. Then you go to another set of characters. Then you go to another set of characters.
Yeah.
We get introduced to all 4 storylines in the first episode. And the first episode is an hour. That's pretty good for streaming shows nowadays. But that means you get 15 minutes with each storyline, which isn't enough to even get introduced to them. And then the second episode, you also get another 15 minutes. So it's kind of like they're trying to cram in too much. But when you look at the story as a whole, nothing happens in 8 episodes.
Yeah. The Elven King in Middle-earth says, hey, look, we're done looking for him. I decree him dead forever. You're all going to Valinor. You have a piece of real estate. See ya. And then she's like, okay, cool. She's on the boat, but then something inside her says, I'm not done here yet. And then she jumps from the boat in the middle of the ocean.
She doesn't really explain what that was. Like, she gets a look in her eye, and we're like, oh, she still thinks Sauron's alive.
Yeah.
But then in the final episode, what did she say? She says...
Something was tying me here, or...
When she jumps in the middle of the ocean and swims however long, she bumps into one, like, a random group of people with, like, one very obviously standout guy and is, like, the only named character because he says his name later in the episode. But it kind of kills all the mystery because Galadriel, as a character, wants one thing: to find and kill Sauron. She bumps into a mysterious person with a bunch of mystery surrounding him, and the show kind of just, like, points all of the arrows at him. It's like, oh, he's Sauron. So then for, like, the next 6 episodes, you're like, okay, I guess this guy's Sauron. But Sauron, who is Halbrand until the finale, his storyline is insane because it seems like he just wanted to relax. He wanted to, like, retire from evil.
Yeah.
Which, again, is kind of interesting.
People are going to say, like, he took on the mortal form to live as mortals do or whatever. Why did he allow himself to be stranded in the middle of the ocean?
That doesn't seem like a good place to be.
Yeah.
Like,
And people are going to say, he did it on purpose to find Galadriel, obviously.
yeah, because it seems like he wants to repent for his evil deeds. So it seems like he becomes a mortal, or, like, as much of a mortal as they can become. And then he gets kicked out of his homelands by orcs. And then Galadriel finds him, sees he has the crest of the king of the Southlands. And she's just immediately like, oh, this guy's the king.
She puts that on him.
Yes, completely. He doesn't want it at all. He even says, oh, I found it on a dead guy. And she's like, I think this mysterious stranger that told me he's a murderer and has done evil is lying.
And she's like, you're going to be the king. And he's like, I don't want to be the king. And she's like, we'll see.
Sounds like something a king would say.
How noble of you, king.
Have you as the head, my guy? And then...
They get found. They get found by Isildur's dad.
And Isildur is in this show even though he's also in the movies, which I think is in 3,000 or 4,000 years. It's a while away. So they get found by the Numenorians, who is another lore dump of a bunch of people that live on an island now.
Yes, they were the good humans.
That helped the elves at some point, and everyone hates the elves now. That's a whole like, oh, they're different from me, I hate them. But every race hates the elves. Once they're in Numenor, her storyline turns into getting the queen to give her an army so that she can go save the Southlands. Even though we don't really know the Southlands is in danger until the other storyline. I guess we get told that Halbrand was in the Southlands, but orcs kicked him out. And orcs seem to be everywhere in the Southlands. But Galadriel's been looking for orcs for 1,000 years.
And hasn't found anything.
Or killed them all, like another
Well, she says like something like, we haven't seen an orc for 100 years.
Like her men have given up on her because it's been fucking ages.
They haven't even heard whispers, then people being run out of the Southlands. They're very bad at their jobs.
They even have a watchtower in the Southlands with like a burning village that happened in the other storyline. But that watchtower didn't see the burning village.
Correct.
So it's just like no one's paying attention to these orcs.
Even though they have elf eyes that can see for very long. And he says it's only a day's walk.
Yeah, they get there really quick in the thing. You can never tell how many days it's been. Has it been weeks? No one's haircut changes. Everyone's always perfectly coiffed.
I could see this whole show happening in like a span of like 3 days.
Ugh. This show should have been a movie, if that. Galadriel finally convinces the queen to give her an army, basically. A bunch of shenanigans ensue, like we meet Isildur, we meet his mummy milker sister, we meet Hot Dad, like, that's right, I sexually objectify everyone.
We see the Palantir. That's maybe it's Saruman's Palantir. Who knows?
That's the orb.
They ponder the orb.
There's lots of orb pondering. She goes to the Southlands, which meets up with the second storyline, which is Arondir, who is an elf that's in love with a human.
Correct.
This show does a lot of things that the movies do, like elf in love with human, and then Hobbit and Gandalf.
Mysterious stranger who's tall and can cast magic and wears a grey robe.
So Arondir's storyline is we're introduced to him in the Southlands. He goes into a tavern, and everyone hates the elves in the tavern.
So he's with the other subsect of humans who helped Morgoth in the war.
It's kind of already cliche of like, oh, I hate you because I'm a racist.
Hey, knife ears. Using words like that, it's like, we need our racial divide in here.
And they also make him a black elf. Like, he's the first black elf in history. I'm more annoyed that he has short hair. I thought the whole thing about elves was that they always have they gave him waves. I don't even like Elrond's hair because, I mean, it looks...
it's perfectly
His hair is impeccable. Literally every elf we see in every other media from Lord of the Rings is like long hair. And these guys are just like perfectly short. Maybe they couldn't make the wigs work.
Yeah. Do you wear wigs?
Do you wear wigs?
So Arondir has to say goodbye to his beautiful human wife because, hey, we finally got orders. No more evil in the Southlands. It's time to go home. Just when he's out, Sauron brings him right back in and he goes on one more quest to discover why this cow is leaking black milk.
The cow has been feasting in the Eastlands or something. So they panic and immediately, without getting back up, him and his girlfriend just sprint to the town over and it's burnt to the ground. And instead of going to get help, the elves should have already realized
we should investigate this.
Yeah, they should have seen the smoke if you burnt the town to the ground. This show makes no sense. They decide to investigate further. He finds a hole in the ground and he's like, I'm going in that hole. She goes, but you don't know where it goes. And he goes, that's why I must go. Like, that's why I must investigate. So then he goes into a hole and then he hears a noise behind him. And he gets, like, scared, basically, despite being a 150-year-old elf warrior.
Well, he fights above the ground, not below the ground.
He doesn't fight the thing. He runs away, backs himself up against a shrub, and gets dragged away and imprisoned. And then he spends an episode or two as a prisoner for the orcs, because the orcs are digging tunnels, it turns out.
What did you think about that powerful scene where he has to cut down the tree?
Not the tree that's been there longer than them.
He says, and then he goes...
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, thank God. So we're in agreement.
That is the weirdest, like, what does him becoming a slave really accomplish apart from...
Because he's black.
For fuck's sake.
No, because cultures in my Lord of the Rings.
It just feels like they wanted to, like, fill up a bunch of time.
Now orcs, who are super strong and powerful as well, they're throwing people through doors and windows and stuff. Now they're enslaving weaker races.
But orcs aren't allowed in the sun. So they're having the elves and the people do the digging for them. But they've only got like 5 or 10 of them. It's like it would have been quicker if they like put up some cover. We know they can make cover and they can like come out with like hoods on. So there's no real reason for that whole episode to happen apart from like he meets a Dar who really doesn't matter at all. He's a compromised elf. He's an evil elf, I guess. And then they just set Arondir free. And then he runs back to the village. The village that Galadriel is coming to protect.
Yes.
And that finally comes to a head in episode 6. So you've waited 5.5 hours to get to this point.
Yeah.
Which is a small battle in a small village.
Over so quick. When all the battling's done, the episode is still only like, it has half the episode to go.
Yeah.
It's insane that you're waiting that long for that.
The second half is kind of like the aftermath, because turns out they failed at protecting the town because the whole Southlands gets blown up because of the side story during Arondir's.
A little Kiwi boy finds a death sword that when fed blood grows into a bigger sword that's actually a key to a waterfall that goes into a volcano that explodes.
And the waterfall can only get to the volcano because that's what all the tunnels they were digging was for. I thought it was so that they could travel without the sun getting hit, but it was, oh no, they were making a path for the water. But then my brain thinks, if this was a big mechanical setup of unlocking this water so that it could get to the mountain, why wasn't there already a path dug? Like if you built a giant key that breaks the dam to blow up a mountain, why did you not already have tunnels in place?
Yeah.
Why did someone else have to come and dig the tunnels?
I don't know, we mustn't have been paying attention. I just don't think the dam was originally meant for that.
That's what I mean by this show makes me feel stupid. Because I don't think they're explaining things and things are just happening. And I'm like, wait, what? How's that? Why? Like, motives are unclear. Everything is just strange.
But that's pretty much the end of his story.
Arondir vanishes.
Yeah, like you see him one more time at the end of that episode in like a tent because his girlfriend tries to heal Halbrand a little bit.
Yep.
And his weird stepson hugs him and it's like, oh, wholesome family moment.
Halbrand goes with them to the Southlands because Galadriel decides he is king. He wants to just be on holidays in Numenor.
But then someone just goes, the king that was promised. And everyone's like, hey, the king. And he's like,
once he's in the Southlands, they just accept it immediately. And again, he never
has that
agreed.
Pouch he does.
Him being the king of the Southlands doesn't make sense because Galadriel finds his lineage and turns out there hasn't been an heir in 1,000 years. She's over 1,000 years old. Wouldn't she know that? Or wouldn't everyone in the Southlands know?
Well, didn't all his sons die 1,000 years back?
She puts all of that on him to become king and he just wants to go on holidays. And then at the very end, he says power over flesh. And she's suddenly so suspicious of Halbrand that she finally decides to look into his lineage.
If she never asked him to stop blacksmithing, he would blacksmith to the end of his days.
If she didn't jump off the boat, Halbrand never would have found her. If she didn't decide he was the king, Halbrand never would have become Sauron.
All the evils of Middle-earth are because she's selfish.
Because she has decided she's right. Because she thinks Sauron exists and then suddenly decides this man is the king of the Southlands. I don't know why the Southlands needs a king. As far as I can tell, it's 3 villages.
Yeah.
Like, it's just like 20 dudes that are like, the king of the north.
Just before Halbrand's story finishes, they go into like a weird vision portal where he's like, I will make you my queen. And she says...
Well, he gets stabbed at the battle in the Southlands.
Yes.
She makes the decision that only elves can heal this, just a stab wound.
Yeah. It's just a regular lance.
Pretty brutal. Like, that sucks, my guy. But, like, you need to travel 6 days on a horse to get him to Linden so that he can get healed. And all the while, by the way, Linden is building a giant forge to smelt stuff because in episode 1, a guy decided he needed it.
Yeah.
He was just like, I need a big forge by the end of spring, which is convenient because turns out they need that to turn the mithril into the rings of power.
Callum Brimboard, the great elven smith, he spends all this time trying to form it into this powerful object, and it turns out he just makes 3 subscribe buttons.
He makes the like button, the subscribe button, and the notification bell. So all the while this is happening,
he's like a little
he gets mithril, but his actual like
in Galadriel's story
goings about, he like talks to her in episode 1, and then he talks to her at the very end when he's like mithril, and they're like, rings of power. But he has possibly the best story.
Definitely the best story.
Who has a better story than Elrond the Broken?
On me. fake Gimli.
Basically, someone said, what if Legolas and Gimli
We're just friends the whole time.
but again?
Yeah.
But one more time. And there's a lot of interesting things they do in that story, like the fact that Elrond's 1,000 years old, whereas a dwarf will die pretty young, and they don't see each other for 20 years. And the dwarf is like, dude, that's ages. And everyone's like, shit, that was a week and a half for me. But then they have a little heart-to-heart. And I think it's mainly just they're charming as people.
It's just like they have like just some good banter.
Yeah.
And like they show actual emotion, whereas like everyone's like communication in this story has...
It's monologue-y.
It's weird, like it's monologue-y. It's like it feels very forced. You're just like, shut up. Like that doesn't sound like doesn't feel like believable conversation. Galadriel talking to anybody, the Queen and like Isildur talking to anybody, and like I could go on every single character in this, but they just feel genuine for some reason. And I think it's because they established that really early in that they were friends, they're not friends, and then you're kind of seeing Elrond claw his way back, and then
They have interpersonal drama.
you're seeing Durin like try to like go out there and like forgive him and show him like that he forgives him.
Then you've got Durin's home life with his wife, and again, she's...
And he's dealing with like princehood kind of, and like wants to be king, but he's not making the right decisions for like the people.
Yeah.
Being a bit selfish, but he's doing the right things.
But his dad's holding him back. There's multiple things going on. There's at least 4 characters with interpersonal drama. Like the king doesn't like the elf at all, but Durin didn't like the elf, but now kind of likes the elf. Disa is the wife, and she's like, come on, maybe give him a chance.
But then she's also power hungry. Like that kind of shows at the end where she's like, that old man is twisted. Like you're going to be king,
you
not
can be
anyone
the
else.
king.
So it's like, okay, she's kind of like poisoning his ear a little bit. But his whole story kind of just revolves around the dwarves control the mithril. The elves need the mithril to save their world.
Well, they don't even know that they need the mithril, honestly. But then maybe they do.
They do. It's like, it's kind of implied. They're like, maybe we need something. Did you find anything, Elrond? And he's like, I swore an oath.
But the mithril is a myth. No one actually has ever seen it. It's in a story, kind of.
Yeah.
Elrond didn't know that that's what he was looking for, or that's why he was even there. Elrond went to get builders to help build the giant forge. So mithril could have just never come up.
It's just 500 IQ Elven King.
Like,
shit.
if who's a
Celebrimbor
prick?
shit.
Like,
He's a prick.
like the king elf sucks in this, and he's just annoying. Like,
Elf King sucked. The Elf King in The Hobbit sucked as well.
I've heard that
so-
he's supposed to be cool as hell, though.
But yeah, and then like his story kind of just wraps up.
Durin vanishes.
Durin vanishes when his dad is like, I take from you your power, and like takes off his little gold chain, and then he just kind of sulks at home because they got caught mining mithril.
He really doesn't get much screen
Elrond
time,
gets banished.
considering he is the best. And then, yeah, Elrond goes back with a small amount of mithril that is all they were allowed to have,
Just the gifted
and
amount.
turns that into the Rings of Power. But the least connected storyline to anything that's
And
kind
the
of...
worst. Don't forget that, Daniel.
I don't think it's the worst. I think Galadriel is easily the worst storyline.
No, because nothing actually happens.
I guess. It's the first 10 minutes of Lord of the Rings, how Frodo decides to go on an adventure, but they span that over 15 minutes an episode for 8 episodes.
No Hobbit has ever wanted to adventure, my man.
Except this one, which is kind of why it gives me Acolyte vibes of like, before Frodo, this was the original adventure Hobbit.
Yeah.
Before Bilbo, this was the original adventure Hobbit.
But they try and set up like this lore around this race of halflings, and then they Harfoots, and then they destroy that lore within their own storytelling. Like their whole culture is built around, we're traveling folk, we're superstitious, and if you can't make the great journey, then we'll leave you behind. But then they're like, no Harfoot ever gets left behind. And then they're like, well, we're leaving everyone behind again. We're never leaving anyone behind again. It's like...
Yeah, okay, from a writing point of view, they're terrible.
Thank you.
I don't know, at least the characters are more likable. Like, they have a personality, I guess. Whereas, like, when you're watching Galadriel, everything's stale.
It's because they're children, I think.
Yeah, like, they've got some life in them. And they're like, they make jokes and stuff. Whereas Galadriel's just stone-faced the whole time.
3,000-year-old vampire.
So basically, Brandyfoot's whole storyline is, when will my life begin? Like, I yearn for adventure, I yearn for difference. So then a meteor comes from the sky and drops off a mysterious stranger with magic powers who's tall and is a wizard and has a grey beard. And like from episode 1, you're like, oh, it's Gandalf. Because they use very similar imagery to Gandalf.
Yeah.
Like at one point he needs to threaten her, I think in episode 2, and they cave the world in like they do when Gandalf threatens Bilbo.
Yeah. Like he gets really big and...
And like everything goes dark. So it's like they're using identical imagery, But then they're trying to hinge on the fact that we don't know who this mysterious guy is. Who could it be? Look at this mystery.
And also he speaks in like that kind of rune elvish speak that Gandalf speaks in whenever he uses magic
and
as
he
well.
whispers to a firefly like Gandalf does to a moth.
And when he's fighting those weirdos, it's like the fight is very like reminiscent of the Saruman and Gandalf fight.
That's very much, we need a fight at the end of our show.
We need him to do something. Make him do something.
They're basically just adventuring the whole time. Like, they're just kind of hanging out. They try to bait and switch you that the stranger is Sauron, not Gandalf. But if you've been paying any attention, you're like, oh, it's not actually Sauron. And then in the same episode, they're like, just kidding. I am good. I'm Gandalf.
Their story just kind of revolves around like she's kind of excommunicating herself and her family because she's harboring this man who they think is like a sign of the end of times.
It's very kids movie.
He's just a big old fella. And he's like...
Do you remember the movie about the kid that gets the Loch Ness Monster in his bathtub?
Yes.
Legend of the Deep or something.
Okay.
It's that. It's this little girl for the first few episodes harboring a giant magical creature, and he doesn't know what he's doing. He's a big stupid baby because he can't talk, he has no memory. And she's like, oh no, what if my parents and my community find out? Oh no. So then there's like shenanigans ensue. But again, the people are relatively charming. There's a weird lot of singing, but it also just goes on for way too long. Again, this whole show could have been a 2-hour movie.
Yeah, their stuff just like, it just feels very repetitive. Like it's like they're very cyclical in like their storytelling.
It's the same every episode, yeah.
It's the same every episode.
Basically, he starts doing something magical. She goes, no. And then she gets hurt. And then she runs away scared. And then he's like, I'm sorry. And she's like, I guess you're just a big dumb man. I forgive you. And then he does it again the next episode. But then in the last episode, they're being followed by 3
of the ugliest people I've ever seen.
By them and friends. And they attack them, basically. And then Gandalf evaporates them. And that's that over. And you're like, oh, okay, cool. Glad we did that. And then they walk off. So they have literally no connection to the overall story.
Well, they were like, we are servants of you, Lord Sauron. And you're like, oh! Very quickly into character and creature design in this show was pretty good. Like the orcs looked amazing.
I do feel a bit bad that we haven't talked about the fact that the show looks fantastic.
Looks good. They don't do enough with like the locations they're obviously filming in. I think there could have been way more like panning shots and just like long like scenery shots. You probably see the most of like scenery and the world in like Arondir's story.
And even there, barely enough rolling hills.
Yeah, I think you only really see it once or twice.
Considering they're shooting in the same place as Lord of the Rings, like they're in New Zealand, there's very little landscape. People always talk about how Lord of the Rings is just one big advertisement for New Zealand. This is not that.
No.
Like they do go to multiple different areas, but yeah, none of it feels real.
Yes.
Whereas,
But overall, I mean, like the show, it was just another mid show getting pumped out.
I'd say mid to low because honestly, it goes for too long.
Yes, it goes for a very long time with nothing happening. I changed my answer. This was dog shit. I wouldn't watch it again.
Oh, no way.
No way. I'd rather just watch a recap like ours.
I don't think anyone's really talked about this show for 2 years. So I had kind of forgotten what the discourse was around it.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, we'll check it out because the new one's coming and I do want a bit of a refresher.
I'm like, why do people hate this again?
But that's why I forgot because nothing fucking happens. Like there's nothing to really catch up on. So basically the story's boiled down to Galadriel wants to find Sauron, accidentally finds Sauron.
Yeah.
Elrond gets sent to find Mithril, finds Mithril for the Rings of Power. Arondir is kind of just around, honestly.
Arondir gets the family he's always wanted.
It does end with him like having a happy family. But realistically, all he did was show that the orcs exist still. What do we want from season 2?
I want a big battle.
Well, good news. I have heard that there's a massive battle spanning 2 or 3 episodes.
Very cool.
And they're calling it the biggest battle in TV show history.
Okay.
So maybe we won't have to wait 6 episodes.
Well, I wonder if they're just going to do the same thing where it's going to be 4 or 5 people that we're cutting to in the battle so they don't have to show the entire time.
I hope there's not nearly this many storylines. And I hope it has more direction now.
Well, we're going to get it, but we don't really need to see Brandyfoot anymore. Like, she's going on an adventure with Gandalf. So maybe Gandalf and Brandyfoot can just show up like, oh, they adventured and turned it. They've shown up in the battle, in the middle of the battlefield or something.
Yeah, like everything that they do is probably going to be pretty inconsequential because I don't think Gandalf's allowed to get too involved because the Hobbit has to happen. It's going to be the Sauron tricks the elves again.
Yeah.
Even though both Elrond and Galadriel know that Sauron's around and can shapeshift. So if they're not very suspicious of everyone, like how is Sauron going to get anything done? How are they going to make so many more rings?
Everything and nothing's going to happen.
It'll be a lot easier to talk about weekly, which is something, although we have a 3-episode premiere. So
we have to sit down for 3 hours.
That's going to destroy us tomorrow night. Jesus Christ. Yeah, join us then for that shenanigans.
Hey, let us know what you thought of the show below.